Hi everyone, welcome to our mini math lesson. My name is Daisy Eccles and I am with WKEC, and today's lesson is going to be focusing on solving percent problems. And this is part one. There will be a part two, so make sure you check back in to see that second half. So today we're going to be looking at solving percent problems, and if we were to look at this very first one up here that I have, 20% of 40, we see these kind of problems all the time every day when we try to find sales tax or discount. And most of the time, a lot of us know how to change the 20% to a decimal. That would be 0.20. And then we would multiply that times our 40. Okay, and that would give us the answer of 8. So 0.20 times 40 equals 8. And we could put that into a calculator, we can put that into our cell phones, and we could solve that kind of a percent problem. But there are a lot of different kinds of percent problems in the GED, and sometimes we're going to see questions that we can't solve this way. For example, for this problem up here, we were looking for the part. We were trying to find the part that is 20% of 40. Okay, but for this other problem here, it says 12 is what percent of 48? In that problem, we're trying to find the percent. So we don't have a percent to change to a decimal. So if we're trying to find the percent, this way of doing it, it doesn't work. For this next example that I have here, 5 is 10% of what number? Well, they're giving us the part and they're giving us the percent, and they want us to find what that's a whole, like the whole number. If we know the part and we know what percent it is of what number. So this one, we're trying to find the whole. And so we can't use this step up there. We can't use the way we normally know how to do percent problems. So there is another way of solving percent problems where we can do any one of those three kinds of problems and we can get the right answer. And so what is that kind of problem? That's what we're going to learn today. What is the process in order to solve any kind of percent problem? And what I want to teach you is how to use proportions. We can use proportions to solve all three of those kind of problems. What is a proportion? Well, a proportion is when we use equivalent fractions and a process called cross-multiply and divide. And if we use proportions, we can solve for any one of those missing numbers, whatever it is we're trying to solve for, by cross-multiplying and dividing. So I'm going to show you some examples of that, and we're going to do some sample problems. So what we need to learn and the process we need to memorize is how to set up the proportion. So we have something called is over of equals the percent over 100. And we're always going to see this side is always going to look like this, the percent over 100, because percent actually means per 100. So this line here actually means per, and we have the 100 on the bottom, and the percent goes on the top. Okay? And then the other thing we need to memorize is over of. Okay? So when we look at these little statements, some of these examples below, we're going to look at number 1. We can see what is 5% of 100. Well, I have my percent, so I can go ahead and set that little part up. I put 5 over 100. That's my percent over 100. And on this other side, for this other fraction, I need to put my is over top of my of. So what is? I don't have my is. So up here, I'm going to put an X to represent my is because I don't know it. And that's called using a variable. We use a variable to represent a number we don't know. On the bottom, I have of 120. So of goes on the bottom, so my 120 goes on the bottom. So now you see I have 3 of these filled in and I'm missing 1. So I can cross multiply. So I'm going to take 120 times 5, and I'm going to do that on my calculator. 120 times 5, that equals 600. Then I'm going to take that 600 and I'm going to divide it by my third number, which is 100. So when I divide 600 by 100, I get 6. So my x equals 6. So what is 5% of 120? Well, 6 is 5% of 120. So that's an example of how to solve that. Okay? We can do another one. We have another one, number 2. What is 75% of 680? Well, I'm going to set up my equivalent fractions. Over here, I have my percent over 100. So there's my 100. I go back to my problem. I can find that 75%. I put 75 up here. Now for my other side, I need is over of. So what is, okay, there's my, I don't know what that is again, so I'm going to put my x of 680. I put that down below. Now I have my proportion set up. So now I solve. I cross multiply and then divide by the other number. So I'm going to do that. 680 times 75 divided by 100. And I get x equals 510. So what is 75% of 680? 510 is 75% of 680. Okay? So we're going to look down here at our next one. 40% of what number is 16? I'm going to go ahead and set up my proportions or my equivalent fractions. I'm going to put my 100 down below. I'm going to go back to my problem and say, do I have a percent? Well, yes, I do. I have 40%. So I put 40 over 100. Now on this side, I need to put is over of. So I go back. I have of what number and is 16. So is, that's 16, and I put that on the top. And on the bottom, of what number? I put x to represent the fact that I have of what number. I don't know it, so I put x there. Now my proportion is set up, and I can do the same thing. But this time, I'm going to cross multiply this way. I cross multiply, so I take 16 times 100. 16 times 100. And then I divide that by my other number. There's my 40 divided by 40. And I get x equals 40. So what 16 is 40% of what number? 16 is 40% of 40. And I got two 40s there. Tricky one. Okay, so I can continue to. Why don't you see if you can do 4 and 5, and I'll give you just a moment to do that. You can pause right here, try those problems, and then we'll go over the answers. Okay, I'm going to assume that you tried them on your own. I'm going to go ahead and set them up and do them and give you the answers. This time I have what percent? I don't know my percent. So x is going to go for my percent. 100 is on the bottom. 30 is, so 30 goes on the top. Of 120 goes on the bottom. And then I cross multiply and divide. X equals 25. And that's my percent, so I'm going to put that percent. So 30 is 25% of 120. Okay, the next one. Set up my proportion. I go over here, I find my percent, 12.5. 70 is, of what number? That's where my x goes. I cross multiply and divide. X equals 560. So 70 is 12.5% of 560. Okay, so when you can see this little statement and it's easy to see the is or the of, you can use this proportion setup right here and solve every time. Okay, but what happens when you have a word problem and it doesn't show you really easily your is and your of? Well, in this case, we have another way to do it. It's still using a proportion and cross multiply and divide, but in this case, we are going to look for the part and the whole. So when you're looking at a word problem, it's kind of easier to say, I'm looking for the part that goes on the top, and then the whole thing, like the whole of something, would go on the bottom. And over here, we still have percent and 100. So we're going to use this when we're trying to solve a word problem. So this number 6 says a local electricians union has 540 members. If 65% of the members attended the last meeting, how many of the members went to the meeting? Okay, so I'm going to set up this proportion, and I know I'm going to have per 100 on the bottom. I go back to the problem, I find my 65%. Now I'm looking for the part and the whole. So I go back and what is my whole thing? A local electricians union has 540 members. So the whole union is 540. So I put this on the bottom. That's the whole union. Now I'm looking for how many of the members went to the meeting. So I'm looking for the part of the union that went to the meeting. So that part would be on top, and that's what I'm looking for, so I represent that with an X. So this is where you have to do a little thinking. You have to kind of consider you're looking for a part and a whole, and just reread your problem a couple of times until you can figure that out. But once you have it set up, you do it the same way. I'm going to cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to cross multiply here and divide. So I'm going to take 540 times 65, and then I've got 35,100, and I'm going to divide that by 100. And that says I have 351. So X equals 351. And so 351 members went to the meeting. Okay, here's our last problem. Number 7. For selling his townhouse, Martin had to pay the real estate agent a commission of 8%. The townhouse sold for $115,000. How much was the agent's commission? Okay, so I'm going to be setting up my proportion. I go back to my problem to see if I can find a percent, and I can, 8%. So now, what is this asking me? This is saying that the part of the sale that goes to the commission for the real estate agent, that commission is the part. That's on top. That's what we're looking for, the agent's commission. So that's the part, and we don't know that, so that's my X. The price that it's sold for, that's the whole amount that he gets back when he sells it. So that's the whole, and that's $115,000. Okay, so I've got my part and whole, my percent over 100. Now I can cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to take 115,000 times 8, and then I'm going to divide that by 100. And that gives me 9,200. So X equals 9,200. And this is money, so I make sure to put the $sign there. That's how much was the real estate agent's commission. Okay, so this concludes part 1. I hope that you will take the time to study this a little bit, get really familiar with this is over of, which is really easy to remember. Is over of equals the percent over 100. And remember, if it's a word problem, instead of one of these little statements, if it's a whole word problem, use that part and whole. The part over the whole equals a percent over 100. Okay, come on back for part 2, where we're going to look at how to find tax and interest, how to do loan interest and sale prices, and also percent of change problems. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.